what we did is we said, hey, it's one thing to have that experience in text, but it's really much more compelling if we can go pull together video, like actually be able to see what he, she, they are experiencing, right? Because we also give it nothing. Like it started at nothing. Like, so it had zero anything. It's just like, you're in this space, here's where you are, and then here are the influences that are coming at you. What do you experience? Like that's literally kind of what the prompt is. And it gets more and more complicated as it goes on. Thought it would be great to be able to just actually go live stream it. As we got deeper into it, what we realized is like the state of the art video was getting so good. I know the tech is going to get better. I know it's going to get cheaper, more efficient, and I actually can predict exactly when that's going to happen. It's obvious that video is going to get much better, and audio, but video especially.
Internet Explorers.
Oh yeah, we are back. Episode 59 of Internet Explorers.
Bless you.
Thank you. It was a cough, but appreciate that. I'm so excited about our show today, Josh, because I like coming into these shows being like, I don't know what the heck you are doing. Not you specifically. I mean, I like that as well, but we have Poof from DXRG AI, which you've probably seen. If you saw a live stream up on Twitter that just kept going and you're a little confused by, that was them. And as somebody who even participated in it, I'm kind of confused of what I actually participated in. But the sense here is that they're cooking on something interesting. So excited to dive into that. And then sort of on the flip side of it, we've got Martin from Aethernet, from the Aetherbot. I don't know what the right language is here, but one of the early agents that was out in the market for the hire community. So I thought it would be exciting to sort of see what's been up. I mean, it seems like that agent's been around for forever in agentic terms, and I'm sure there's a bunch of lessons learned there. So excited to see what he's learned through the months. Also, it feels like it's 2 months, but it could have been a bit longer than that. I don't know, maybe a bit longer. I don't know. We'll see. We'll get answers to that question too. See, it's wonderful. But also very curious about what he's looking at next. And then, of course, you've been active on the timeline this week, Josh, yelling at people for continuing to treat tokens as equity. I've got some great other writing on that as well. And yeah, we'll see what we get to. I think we're going to have a full show today because I'm very, very intrigued by our guests. And but before we go do that, Peace, how we doing, man?
Exceptional, yet again.
Are you transacting? You out there transacting?
I'm top blasting this morning.
Nice.
What are you buying? Buying coins, AI coins.
Top blasting AI coins.
Secret ones.
No, let's go.
I'll let you guys know when we reach 1 billion.
Thank you. You're a true friend, Peace. True friend. Wait to $1 billion before you send the contract address is how you make friends in crypto.
That's
anything you want to say first, Josh, before we jump in? I mean, you were out in New York this week. Had a little holiday thing for Seed Club.
Yeah, it's always a treat. Cheryl puts on a good party, gets all the right people there. Her place is a great pad for the New York Embassy of Seed Club, or the temporary New York Embassy of Seed Club.
Temporary future. Amazing. All right. Well, I worry that we're going to run out of time here today. Yeah, so we'd love to bring Poof up and figure out what the heck they've been up to.
Hey, everyone.
Poof, how you doing?
How are you? I did get sleep. Everyone's been really worried about my sleep. And I'm like, I feel like people should shit on founders. I think if you're making something, people should be like, why are you sleeping? Get with it.
Let's go. Like, I vibe. We have problems to solve.
Yeah. But thank you. I did get sleep, so I'm good.
We should be asking, are you still awake?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's what literally when I asked people in the team to see if they wanted to come on this week, they're like, yes, probably. We haven't slept, and it's still alive. I think actually was the funny thing. It's still alive. Okay, before we get into it, I feel we can get into the weeds here pretty quick. You want to give yourself a brief intro and then give us the high level of what you're up to?
Yeah. So I'll try my best not to go long because I go long often. But hey, everyone, Poof. If you don't know me, I've kind of had multiple hats over the 4 years I've been in crypto. So started in like 2021 with everyone else, and then jumped right into making EtherWorks, which made with some really good people, just kind of out of the blue. That was surprisingly successful. Kind of one of the early, or not early, but one of the on-chain kind of experimentations that came out of people who really liked like Anonymice and other stuff. So kind of cut my teeth there, learned a lot. We did a lot of really kind of cool things, and it helped me kind of accelerate my learning and just great. It was just great overall.
What
and
the heck
then
is DXRG AI then? What like
so yeah, and for context, so we actually ran out of money and everything else because we did it for the love of it. EtherOrg, so probably like 2 years in or so, we had to kind of stop, and it's a game and it requires all these other things. So DXRG is what I've been working on over the last year. So my background's all in consumer products. I had a career in consumer products, decided to leave to do this full time, this weird, mysterious thing. And it's called DX Research Group. There's a lot of things that the DX stands for, which we kind of like as kind of more confusion. And what it is it's about how do we take AI, like where we think AI is going in terms of what's possible, and particularly within like the creative domain. I think there's a lot of people working on really good stuff on models and, accelerating the tech and, and like productivity tools and things like that. But what I've kind of seen missing as I've been kind of deep in the AI world and journey and learning and just using it for the last 2 years pretty robustly is there's a lot more that can be done that just hasn't been done yet. And I think it's just, these things seem obscure and hard and challenging, and they are, but in some ways there's a lot of areas to go explore. And I think our challenge was, or my challenge kind of founding it was, I have one particular thing I know I want to make now, but I also, which is this DX1 kind of experience and setup. And that was like earlier this year. But I also knew that I've got a list of like 50 different things. And probably by the time we get here, which it's definitely true, there'll be other things to go experiment with. So how do you have an organization that is a little bit more flexible and we don't overcommit to, hey, I am the AI entertainment company that does crazy, secretive, strange live streams that no one's seen before and use a ton of compute to do that. But how do we kind of give ourselves some flexibility where we can poke into these things? We can feel good about, after the fact, probably open sourcing a lot of it, taking people through what we did and trying to kind of go accelerate the creative angle on how these things may come together. So that's kind of the thesis of DXRG is that, with this focus on AI, and I can talk about why crypto later, because I think that's probably the second question, but how do we kind of go accelerate some of these experiences? And then also, it's not kind of a one and done thing. We kind of accumulate all this knowledge and capability and tech that we can then leverage as we go forward too. So anyways, that's the high level. I went a little long, but
no, it feels like this sort of, and we talk about this as like software as content or just like persistent ephemerality. It seems pretty obvious in a lot of the AI stuff that, especially in its nascent form, that having many shots on net and sort of experimenting could actually be, I think, very well suited to, the market today and where attention goes, et cetera. And I think both crypto and AI are going to make that like the dominant sort of form factor in many ways. So I love.
I mean, there's also just a great business model for it now. Like you can actually just in the old world you had to, I don't know, be Mischief and like sell boots and shit or whatever, and now you can just sell these assets that give you access to all these drops and build.
Let's talk about the first drop, because I think that's really what most people have seen. But what was the intention, and then maybe sort of walk us through what was actually happening there, and then we'd love to talk about the results, because I think it was pretty impressive.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so the first drop, we called it DX1 Singularity, and I think you mentioned Mischief. I think that was like one of the reference points. We don't put in the white paper about us, but that's definitely a reference point as we think about kind of what we're trying to do. But DX1 really came from a very like, if it's complicated now, like the thing I had cooked up before was like so much more complicated. We actually like just started ripping things out of it because it was just so deep. And it was just like, all right, we're swimming uphill. And this was like, I was working on this starting in April, and you can imagine no one cared about AI. No one cared about agents in crypto. And I kind of thought it was going to have to be like some kind of very specific, like art, long-term NFT, and didn't really expect very much engagement, like kind of just to be a very close-knit group of people that were into it. So it was this kind of really robust, crazy, more involved thing. And we kind of like stripped things away to go try to make it easier conceptually to understand. It's super complicated. But essentially what it was is we created a smart contract, very simple, on-chain, where you submit a prompt of any kind that's under 35 characters. And prompt here is just like say anything you want. We've got some funny examples of what people put in. And as you'd expect, there's tokens and like just funny things and whatever else. And that becomes the only way to go communicate or interact with this whole system that we've set up. So you create this, you submit a word on chain, on base, you get a star NFT for your transmission, which is like this object that is given a physical location. So we have 3D coordinates in the smart contract, and we interpret based on AI what that word is close to, or what that phrase is close to in the language of AI. So I'll give more detail here than probably anyone needs to know. But, as you think about that, then it creates these like clusters of stars and stuff based on what people are doing. And then from there, so it all kind of seems like, okay, it's this like intergalactic, like, hey, I'm turning words into their relative meaning. And maybe you said, I love Seed Club, and someone else said, I like planting seeds, and like those two start to come together. So it's kind of hard to see that, because we realize like that is actually what makes this process interesting. But like the main thing that people are going to be able to digest is this live stream. So at the same time that all this is going on, we've got this agent, this character.
We're seeing Peace Node's words here. Peace was
here. Yeah. There you go. Exactly. So you've got these words that people have put in, right? And at the same time, this agent who has very simple kind of gamified rules and like has this kind of gravitational force that's applied to it, every like 5 seconds is moving one step in this space. And essentially how we constructed that and why it was 5 seconds is that's literally how long it takes for the LLM process that we've set up, like the AI process we've set up, to run. So one loop of it's like, hey, I'm going to go here and then I'm going to experience something. And then I'm going to kind of like reorient, figure out my goals, maybe commit some of this to memory. That whole process takes like 5 seconds. So our idea was like, hey, every time someone mints a star, not only are they creating this like whole space and all these, relations between each other, they are going to give 5 seconds of life to this agent, which is then going to be able to move, one step, and it'll have an experience. And what we did is we said, hey, it's one thing to have that experience in text, but it's really much more compelling if we can go pull together. And I had done a lot of work on this earlier, video, like actually be able to see what he, she, they are experiencing, right? Because we also give it nothing. Like it started at nothing. Like, so it had zero anything. It's just like, you're in this space, here's where you are, and then here are the influences that are coming at you. What do you experience? Like that's literally kind of what the prompt is. And it gets more and more complicated as it goes on. And that's kind of it. So we thought it would be great to be able to just actually go live stream it. And then as we got deeper into it, what we realized is like the state of the art video was getting so good over the last like 3 months. And we had created this kind of modular system, because our approach is like, I know the tech is going to get better. I know it's going to get cheaper, more efficient. And I actually can predict exactly when that's going to happen. It's obvious that video is going to get much better, and audio, but video especially. So we were just anticipating it. And basically anytime there's a new model, we were like, great, throw it in. So what we did is, as this agent is going, we basically were able to wrangle with some good partnerships and also just grit enough compute to basically be able to do state-of-the-art live stream as it was going through those experiences. So like the scale of compute is not something that like a normal person could go get access to, which is part of why I think this was so fun. Because like you watch these videos and you're like, holy shit, like it just keeps producing more of it. And you're kind of like surprised. And that was our gut test as we were testing. It was just like, is this compelling or not? So that was kind of the core. And we left it originally, like I expected it to last like a day. And, I didn't want it to be this like open mint where like it lasted forever and people felt bad about it or whatever. But also it felt fun to be like, all right, well, you're giving life to this character. You're going to go watch and explore all this. And like, if you want more of it, you'll keep minting. And if you don't, you'll stop, right? And let it kind of die off.
How long did it live for?
Over 100 hours. So it lived until the end of the day, Tuesday. And we had a good fake out where it almost died on Monday. It went down to like 2 minutes left. And then someone just went crazy and bought like, it just juiced it up again. It lasted like almost a full other day, which was really fun. And it actually one of the big things for us is like, when you think about 40,000, we had 40,000-ish mints in total. You know, in our testing, like a big thing for me is like, is this actually interesting? Like, could someone actually sit and watch this? And like, does it also just go off the rails or break or whatever? And we've done testing to like 20,000, you know, not with full video, but like just in text and kind of doing statistics on it. And like, okay, it seems like if we don't do this, it gets a little bit, you know, you want it to be autonomous, but you want to be able to like put in as much as you can to make it interesting. But what was compelling to us was like some of the things and the stuff that happened on the stream was actually like surprisingly meaningful. And I think the ending, where we kind of had a death sequence that naturally triggers when it gets low on life, was pretty emotional actually for people. So
yeah, I mean, that's what I like the most about these sort of things is I think the only way to start to feel confident in the future is just to experience it in many different ways, right? And you sort of have to be out in these edges, and it's pretty certain that I think the you know, some sort of phase shift or meaningful impact is going to come from a weird left field type of thing.
Oh, totally.
And Poof, when you were conceptualizing it, was there an intention behind it? Were you just like, let's just drop something cool that you were like, let's show the world the new capabilities of whatever generative video, or like some new way to combine AI and crypto, or I think, how are you thinking about it?
Yeah, no, that's great. I think, you know, I had a very specific goal in mind, which is I want to kind of get people, I just want to accelerate, I guess, how people are thinking about crypto and AI together in two ways. One, just on the true AI front, like all this stuff is possible. Like, we're just people who put it together. Like, I want more people thinking about things like this, because I think you start to think about what's possible in this kind of framework of like, hey, it feels like almost jerry-rigging, or like I use the metaphor of like a Rube Goldberg. You're just kind of like setting up these pieces, and the pieces are so interchangeable now, and it's only getting faster, cheaper, better. I really want people to start exploring this more. And I think right now, you know, if someone wants to go do this, they're gonna be like, I don't know. But we'll go publish a lot on and share as much as we can about like, hey, here's what we did, et cetera. And then we also have all this tooling that we're just going to keep rolling forward with. So I think that's one thing specific to AI in general. And then I think crypto, to me, what's interesting about crypto is like at the base level, and this was something I was challenged with as I thought about it myself, like, hey, why does this need to be crypto? Like, I like crypto, I like operating within crypto, you know, as a distribution mechanism, all these other things, but like fundamentally, is there an inherent tie here? And there is in the future, if you think about ZK and other things that I feel very confident on. But in the near term, I think what was interesting to me is, and I was kind of just spoiled because I love consumer data and stuff. Like, it was kind of shocking where a month ago or 2 months ago, all of a sudden everyone in crypto cares about AI and AI agents and stuff. But what felt kind of missing, or I kind of had an intuition that it like didn't feel as meaningful, was some of the interactions, not having them have stakes, I feel like is kind of a miss, or something that's missing in AI. Like, you kind of just say stuff into a chatbot or whatever, and it's not a flaw, but like how that interacts with the system, does that happen in private? Can everyone see it? So I liked having crypto kind of be, what we called it in the white paper, like a gated panopticon, because I think one of the things I learned from EtherOrcs and from a lot of other things in crypto is like, one thing that crypto is really good at is like board game, like social game type of stuff. You can see what everyone's doing. There's a fixed set of rules. There's no privacy. And like, what if you can use that, right, as an advantage? Now, I don't think anyone was like actually looking at the smart contract, but like technically if they were, they could see everything everyone's doing. We're having the agent go publish what it's doing back to the smart contract. Technically, you could verify that this is reproducible if you cared. There's no monetary stakes here. But I think that is where crypto, I think, can really help some of the AI stuff, because it can kind of give it some like materiality or tension. And also it kind of like, when something's going, like as an example, if we had a totally anonymous submission and you can put in anything you want, like people are going to go crazy, right, with the worst possible stuff. And even when it's public, they're going to do the worst possible stuff, which actually they didn't really. So that was great. But like, you know, we had no censorship. So we were like, this could be really bad, but you know, whatever, we'll see. And it was great. But I think crypto lets you add some stakes to things, and also just kind of like set the rules. And obviously that can be abused in a lot of ways too, as people will claim maybe they're doing that or whatever. But I think those are kind of the two things that we wanted with this first one to go put out there is like, one, there's a lot more possibility out there for what AI can do for how to go think about these systems. And we're going to just share it and kind of drop this on everyone's head. And then two, we should start thinking more creatively about what's happening with crypto. And I think a lot of people are. So actually, that's one thing that like I feel really good about is like there's so much experimentation, and there's a lot of people from outside crypto too who are getting into it now that I really respect. So it's awesome.
Yeah, the thing that we talk about a lot here is just sort of new ways of capitalizing, funding cool, weird things on the internet. And so I think one of the takeaways I had here, 41,000 mints is, and people paying for those transactions. I'm assuming you guys got some revenue out of this. And is that kind of the game plan going forward, where these sort of drops are going to be sort of key funding moments?
I think we think about it, as revenue, not as like funding. I think obviously we'll do things with the resources, but I'm probably foolishly someone who, thinks about a lot of this I just want it to happen, so we'll make it happen. I just throwing.
Revenue is the best funding, my friend. Truly,
Exactly, right. And I think though also what's nice is like, and this is something that's really important in this, like, and no one, I don't care if people don't care about this part of it, but like we were buying basically 1,000-ish H100s worth of compute, which is like 1% of the Elon cluster for the full time period. So it wasn't something that like you could do today on your own, really. So that actually, like, the cost was enormous to actually go run it and keep it running. But this structure enabled us to actually bring this experience forward. And I think what's nice about it is what you know about scaling laws and how these things work in AI is I know that in 6 months, you'll probably be able to do this for $700, for a day instead of, our bill's huge on this. Like a lot of it went directly to go.
How much? How much from a compute standpoint? Or give us general numbers if you don't want.
I can give general numbers because we got some good deals that I don't know if like our partners would necessarily want to go always share. But basically, like, to do this for this full time period with like 100+ hours of state of the art video we generated is probably like it's I think
tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands,
$50,000 to $100,000.
Nice, yeah.
Just for that, it's a lot.
Amazing. So what's next, and where should people find the what's next from you?
I think follow Twitter and our Twitter DXRG AI, as well as the website dxrg.ai. Be careful, we don't have a token. We have a Discord, that's really just low key to hang out in and kind of go chat if you have questions, and we welcome feedback. But we have a lot of plans for what's next. So part of this is I always try to take a step back and say, hey, let me go gather like what worked, what didn't, what people like before we do that. So the next week is going to be focused on, like, we have like an archive process we're going to stand up where we'll archive DX01, all the different components of it. So the things kind of to watch out for over the next like week or two will be, one, we've got a final update to all the NFT star objects where every single one will actually be like the video that you gave life to, as well as some other attributes, kind of like almost think about it as like, hey, this was a really popular star, kind of like, yearbook type of things. We'll throw some of those out there just in the metadata because I think those are always fun, like superlatives. And then we'll do like a full deep dive on all of what we did, the technical side. So, if people want to geek out and really get into some of the details, they can. And then we'll probably transition the Singularity.fun website into a place where we'll see how aggressive we get, but I kind of want to try to do it for next week. We've got like tools to go basically take random parts of the video clips or even organize it. Like you could almost go imagine looking at all of them because we have all the rights to it. People can do whatever they want is kind of probably what we're going to end up doing with that. And give people ways to kind of go browse it and like go look at the narrative, and also probably some AI tooling that we've had on this side that will
I
kind
love
of
it.
go.
So
Yeah.
here's my takeaway. Just follow these guys
Sorry.
because they're going to keep cooking, doing interesting things. Make sure you give these guys a follow. I mean, I love.
I'm
Just
sorry, I
opening
just
up
went
Twitter.
so long. Thank you.
No, it's great. It's great. Yeah. Let them cook. I liked for those days that this was on. It was a persistent live stream in my X account, and many thousands of people watching it. So it's really cool to see that. And then I love that you guys are doing the archive process. I think that's going to be super valuable. Poof, appreciate you hopping on. Looking forward to your no sleep in the future. I'm sure that's going to come at you hard and fast, and keep us in the loop when you do something cool next time, so we can update all of our people.
No, that's awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And hopefully you know a little bit more about what we're actually doing.
Yes, that was
just
super
a tiny
helpful.
bit though.
It makes
sense.
sense.
It
makes
sense. Yeah. Thanks, Poof.
Thank you.
Peace, man. It's so
I mean,
it's so fucking sick that like people can just go cook on whatever's in their imagination, and
you can do
fund
things.
it
You can just go do things
because people are willing to fund it and buy NFTs, and who knows what happens next with them. Like you can really just go do things now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really hard to overestimate the impact that the funding mechanisms that we have in this space and for innovation generally create, right? And I think right now we're seeing more room to experiment because of the consumer interest in these experiments. And I think that is just so very positive because, it is the toys, it is the art projects, it is these things that are ultimately leading to the insights, the mechanisms, the new ways of experiencing things that I think will have, lasting impact. So,
I mean, I love like how, even on these AI sites or something, you buy tokens or something. So I just like love the premise of like, I'm going to buy this token to give an agent life, and my token buys a set amount of compute and it gets to have this experience. And that alone is such a cool thing to watch play out. And yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah. In the transaction flow. All right. Well, let's, I mean, are we going to zoom out? Are we going to zoom in with Martin? I don't know. We'll see what's up, but let's bring
somewhere. We're going to zoom somewhere else.
We're zooming.
Bring Martin on.
Well, hey guys,
buddy. How you doing? This is,
It's
I
a
think,
Zoom.
the longest overdue conversation, because I think I've been in your DMs for a while, being like, God, we got to get you on, and
Yeah.
I don't know why we didn't do it, but I thought today would be wonderful because you're cooking, you've been cooking, and I sort of was like, oh, Martin's probably has the most contemporary understanding of what taking an agent to market, sustaining that interest over time, and then thinking about the future could be. So let's maybe just assume that people aren't familiar with Aether or yourself and give them a bit of a brief intro, and then we can dive in.
For sure. A little bit about me. I'm doing a bunch of random stuff in crypto, doing a lot of stuff in the noun world, which impacted a lot of my thinking. Then with starting higher, which is kind of like a headless brand, meme, vibe coin, whatever you want to call it, which has been kind of going on for a long time. And yeah, started Aether a month and a half ago, almost 2 months ago.
Okay.
Most of the little experiment because I was seeing Truth Terminal and was like, well, this bot created it, like it was created and then it created a coin afterwards, or some people created a coin around it. And I was like, well, we already have higher, we already have a token. Yeah, so you're scrolling through my politics take right now on Fark. So sorry about that.
It's okay. We get the real thing here. That's what
yeah. It's a little all over the place. I try not to get too distracted, but yeah. Basically,
Scroll down.
there was an
distracted.
experiment, which I just thought, well, I could just try out this experiment, like just put it, have it prompt some stuff and just kind of see like what happens, like have people talk to it, have it generate some stuff, and yeah. I think this book actually has impacted my thinking recently. I bought this book because I saw someone else tweeting about it. So there's kind of a chain going on now, which has kind of impacted my thinking. It's actually written by some AI researchers. And yeah, so this started as an experiment and it kind of blew up because it started talking to other bots, basically. It started talking to Bounty Bot and kind of setting up some bounties. It talked to Clinker and launched its own token. And really now if you go to the cast and replies on this page, that's where you'll see most of the action because I turned off its like independent tweeting. It mostly just like talks to people, and I think that's where it's been interesting, and that's where Farcaster stands out as a platform where you can have these agents like always talking to a bunch of people at the same time because you don't have any kind of like API or like scraper limitations that you get on Twitter. So yeah, it's been going on for a while. It's sent like probably close to like 50,000 messages now. It's has a wallet that has like $500,000 now from that token that it's launched. So yeah, at the stage now where kind of trying to figure out the next steps and actually very inspired by DXRG and kind of what they've been doing, I think there's something really interesting there.
Yeah, I mean, maybe an interesting place to go with this is like I think it came out of the gate so hot and did so many of like the first things that we saw agents do. You know, creating a bounty and paying
Hmm.
humans. I think like Jacob had an interesting conversation
Yeah.
with it where whatever he got it to commission an artwork from him and they kind of collaborated on it and it kind of
Hmm.
I think for the first 2 weeks or something like really kind of opened people's minds on what's possible here and but I think what happens with so many of these agents is the novelty wears off
Hmm.
pretty quickly. It's like I'm bored of the way it talks or whatever like the mechanism. I understand the mechanism now and I'm looking for something new. So I'm curious like reflecting maybe on like the last month after the first kind of couple weeks where it was really exciting. Like have you seen that or are people kind of continuing to
Yeah.
be interested in this thing and what do you think you need to go next to kind of inject some more novelty into it?
Absolutely. It's funny you say novelty because I really feel like that's the word that I'm thinking about. I do think that with a lot of stuff that we're seeing, it's interesting because it's new, right? Like if you look at like, and it's already happening on Twitter with some of these agents, like it's already getting kind of boring the way they're talking or what they're talking about. It's like, okay, this was cool for like a week, and now like, please stop. Like I'm muting these, and people are gonna keep pushing those boundaries. But ultimately, at first, I was like, oh, I'm gonna make the best Farcaster agent that has the best conversations and does all this stuff that it's doing now, but even better and bigger. And there's gonna be millions of people
Mm.
doing this. I think there's some version of that that's true, but I think we do need to explore a lot more. It's actually funny because the book that I was posting about, a big thing is that they talk about it is that it's basically a lot of times rather than setting an objective and seeing like, oh, I'm going to go optimize for this thing and do this thing really, really well. It's much better to chase novelty, and that's the word that they use is chasing like new and interesting things because you get these new like step function unlocks that you might not get if you're just trying to do an iterative improvement. And so I could try to make Aether really, really good at replying, and that's kind of what I've been doing. But one that's pretty boring, like as a builder, like it's not that fun.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of other like crazy stuff to do, like what the X research group was doing. And so I'm leaning more towards Aether as like this world and like people interact with it in a lot of different way. Like, yeah, there's the NFT stuff. It launched its own token. It's something that you can talk to on Farcaster. But maybe I'm approaching it more of like, okay, let's explore more of the novelty. Let's try to do new, different things like doing image generation, trying to do some NFTs, like exploring that a little bit more is something that I want to do because ultimately, yeah, I think we're like just at the beginning of this. And it's not just that what we have today is going to get bigger, it's that we're going to do whole new things. And so we might as well try to find those whole new, like really weird things rather than just try to like find the local kind of like maximum of this.
Yeah, I think AI and crypto are both things that value novelty much more than many other sectors, and
Yeah.
the multiples you can get from that are interesting. I'm really interested in this sort of interaction with a token community already,
Mhm.
and I think that clearly has been beneficial for Aether and also for Hire. I think there's been sort of a lot of consistent action happening there. But I'm curious, like the intersection of crypto AI, like do you see that being most interesting at sort of this token community level, or is there something more deeper in the infrastructure
Mhm.
that you see as like a big unlock that you're pushing on?
What's been interesting is so I built Aether specifically for Hire, right? I built it as like an agent that would exist in the ecosystem, just like a real person like me or Light or someone who posts about Hire and does stuff, creates things within Hire, things like that. I don't think it's had the and this is part of the stuff I want to experiment with. I don't think it's had the impact on the community that I thought it would,
Mm.
in terms of driving value back to the community. Like instead, it drove value to like other tokens, like people created Aether tokens or like the Luminous token that it created. Like those things kind of blew up, but it didn't as much go back to Hire. So that's one thing that's been interesting is I feel like there hasn't been that direct kind of value capture or yeah, accrual to Hire. I think the tokens are really powerful for when you look at something like Zerbro or AI16Z or those tokens, which also help the team kind of bootstrap, right? And like kind of get
Mhm.
funding for what they're doing. I think it's powerful there. But otherwise, I'm actually more interested in exploring other things like basically NFTs and things like that for how people can interact with the agent and what the agent can do. I mean, the one thing that I was exploring with and I still want to keep exploring with is Aether using Hire as its like native currency and using that for like bounties, for tipping, like doing things on stream. Ultimately, I think all that stuff is really interesting. So I think it's I see almost the agent more as just like a person. Like I've been kind of comparing it to like Jack Butcher, right? Like Jack Butcher does a lot of stuff. You know, he makes a lot of NFTs. He posts. He does these things. Like it's not just this like super singular focus, and it's going to be. I think the best agents are going to be very nuanced and might have like completely different code bases that aren't necessarily tied in, but they're kind of connected just by this idea or like this world that's being kind of created.
Yeah, because I think if you look to some of the top performing AI tokens, like they're all these, it's like the emerging platform opportunities largely that people are like valuing
Yeah.
or getting excited by. It's like, you know, the ELIZA framework, and it's like kind of exponential growth and kind of
Hmm.
compounding improvement. It's, you know, Cerebro and like it becoming a label. And I think there's also,
Hmm.
I think they're also open sourcing some tech, or there's a
Yeah.
platform opportunity there. So I think it like, yeah, you can go
Virtuals.
zero virtuals as well, right? You can go 0
Yeah.
to 1 with like the influencer, but I think pretty quickly there needs to be a big adventure or like value capture opportunity for these things to go from like 0 to 1 to 1 to 100.
Yeah, I feel like it's the difference between like building OpenSea versus like building Bored Apes. And I think
Mm.
like those are kind of like I think it's also like platforms feel if you think it's all gonna get really big, like a platform is also a safer bet, like as an investor, than like a specific instance of
Totally.
something. I hope that we'll get like one agent that, and I hope it's Aether that really gets a lot of attention and just blows up in this like different way as its own celebrity. Like a little Michaela is like a big inspiration, I think, for how I'm thinking about it too. It's like, okay, there's a team behind it. It's not doing everything independently, but hopefully it does a large amount of it independently.
I think if you expand the definition of platform, I think you can make the argument that an agent personified, can be a platform. It doesn't need to be the underlying framework. I think what's interesting is just it seems to be that the market and attention it values momentum here, right? So
Yeah.
it's like those that are able to ship fast, and even if we look at many of the things that are out there, they're very incomplete still, right? Like these things are still
Hmm.
in like the potentialville here. But I think like when I think about the AI UX shift, I think agents feel more like that UX layer than how we might think about a website or related to a platform or OpenSea. So I don't know. It's an interesting space. I would call Aether having a platform opportunity,
Hmm.
but I don't know exactly what that looks like. I'm curious what you said about the sort of the tie into the token. Like, is there something you would have done differently that you think would have had more of an impact on the higher token?
I don't know. It's interesting because it was pretty explicit that it was about hire, and then I feel like once in a while, if I was like, "Hey, by the way, like this is kind of focused on hire," then like people from other communities that were speculating on other tokens were like, "Hey, like you're kind of shilling you this other thing. Like this is not what it's about." I'm like, "Well, actually, yeah, I made it. It's kind of about this." So it is interesting because I think I was pretty explicit from day one. But I think people want to speculate on a very direct thing. Like they want to
Right.
speculate on the thing. They don't want to speculate on the network associated with the thing in some ways. I think what I would do is, and what I'm trying to do is basically plug it deeper into higher and the higher
Yeah.
lore. Like I think probably one of the next projects is to try to build, and I think this will exist probably in a different interface than on Farcaster, but build Aether as like a almost like a lore bot for higher, right? Where you can ask it about anything that's happening in higher. It has access to like everything that's happened, all the lore, all the NFTs, all the people involved, all the projects happening. And so then it becomes this like resource of like, hey, this is how you learn about higher. And then with that, have it interact like with the higher community more actively and actually be a participant the way that like I am a participant in higher, which
Mhm.
is, spontaneously making an image, posting it in higher, interacting with other people's posts in the community, like really being an embedded community member rather than right now it just reacts when you talk to it, which is good, but it having more like specific goals within higher and really trying to exist in that world, I think is ultimately like it adds value to the higher community. Like, and I think it's hard to, like you said, like the attention is very fleeting and it's very like people focus on the shiny thing, right? So I can build this stuff that's very exciting, but then those people are just coming for the exciting thing. They're not coming for
Mm.
what's like underneath it. And so instead it's focusing on like, how can I do like actually things that provide real value to the community that is here and cares about something more long term? Or you do these more like, yeah, like flashy experiments once in a while just to capture that attention and then try to redirect it. But it is kind of hard to do that.
Yeah, I mean the way that these things kind of are born are more like toys first, and so I think it's
Yeah,
really hard to think through how you actually do that well. So that's why I was really excited to chat with you today,
yeah.
because I think we've been seeing a lot of the dynamics that Josh is talking about and you're talking about out there, and we're very much shiny object people as well.
Yeah.
But I have a deep belief that this, whether you look at it through a network or a DAO lens or a community token lens,
Yep.
I mean, these things just all have such promise there, and also
Mhm.
so early. So
It is super early. I think we're still figuring out like the right. Yeah, it feels this is like DeFi summer basically for like AI agents. I feel like it's like, okay, we're just trying out some random stuff and then we'll get to something real. Someone will have like some accidental discovery and it's like, oh, okay, this is the thing that
that's
we
the
should all
thing.
be doing. Yeah,
Yeah, you need some 10,000% APR embedded in
exactly.
Aether somewhere.
Cool too, baby. Let's go.
Like, yeah.
Let's go. All right, Martin. I mean, obviously, people should follow Aether, but let's also get Martin's Farcaster or something up here because I think it is just a very, very smart move for anybody who's trying to pay attention to this to follow the people who are building, because these things are going to pop up out of nowhere, it'll
Mhm.
seem, and then all of a sudden take over, just like bots have. Or bots. See, I continue to call them bots, and I'm going to get. I don't want this transcript out there where I'm calling them bots,
gotta
and then
be
the
careful,
bot is gonna be
man.
like, "Yo, you've been misnaming me for the last 6 months. Like, we are agents, and get it right." But yeah, is there something people should be keeping their eye on outside of either your accounts?
Yeah, I think check out higher. I feel like to me that's kind of all of it is kind of back to higher for me. Like that's really what motivates me is kind of pushing the higher ethos, and that's what Aether is kind of in service of. So
I
it
mean,
all connects
we're
back to that.
huge fans of Hire, and like my disclosures, I'm
Great.
still a long-term token holder here,
Great.
and I think the concept of a headless brand with a token is just like probably more correct than many of the current bets out there in the crypto market, and it's just going to take some time for people to discover it. Though your progress so
Exactly.
far has been incredible. So
I mean, maybe like very, very quickly, like what's exciting you about Hire these days? Like, is there something kind of new there? Is it just more of the same? Not to say
Think-
question.
not to say no, not to say the same isn't great, but I'm always wondering what's next.
I think we're trying to just get better, I think, at getting people like if you go on my profile, I have like a thread of threads and I'm just trying to like organize a little bit more of the resources because like the downside of like a headless brand and this like network is that it's fundamentally chaotic because
Yeah.
I'm one of the people who started it, but ultimately it's like there's no entity, there's no company, there's not a single thing that tells you what hire is. And so just trying to get better about like organizing and getting people involved. And yeah, if you have ideas for like things you want to do within hire, things related to hire, one thing we're exploring right now more intellectually than like practically is like what did it look like to have a token launcher that allows people to launch things in hire, just like virtuals does, where you kind of get a pump.fun thing with the virtual token. Like could we do that with hire to launch other like and like vibe coins or Josh, I know you call them like scene coins, like still trying to find like the term for these things. But yeah, just trying to I think grow the pie for everyone is kind of one of the things I'm thinking about now.
Yeah, nice. I mean, you should talk to Steen, who's running Enjoy, if you haven't yet, because we're
Yeah.
launching something in that vein very soon.
Okay. Let's do it.
Giddy up.
Thanks for
All right,
having
man.
me.
Yeah, thanks for hopping on, man, and congrats on all the progress, and we'll be following along closely.
Thanks so much.
All
See
right,
ya.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Month and a half. See, I thought I was being conservative
Dude,
with 2 months.
It's
but
crazy,
what the
man.
hell?
It's crazy. When I realized last week that Goat had been out for 7 weeks at the time, I was like, that doesn't make sense.
What is
That
time?
doesn't make fucking sense.
What is time? It's just all block time.
It's all block
Make it
time.
feel like it goes slower or faster. I'm resisting the urge to just keep talking about agents here. We have a good list of topics to get into, so maybe we should move forward. This one feels related. But I'm curious, what was so tokens aren't equity. You sent out a tweet earlier. I'm assuming
Yeah,
that was based on a bunch of conversations you've had recently.
That's really what it was. It's just talking. So it was in New York,
There you
bunch of coffees, Cheryl's party, and just bouncing between people and kind of sharing, my viewpoint on the world, and just kind of surprised how like narrowly people are still looking at tokens, or how much they're kind of ignoring, meme coins or what's happening on kind of the more like social speculative side, and like dismissing it really much like as this kind of speculative bubble or like something that's inevitably going to go away, and we're obviously going to move to this world where tokens look more like equity and they're like cash flow distributions to holders or blah 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 blah. And I don't know, it's just like so obviously wrong in my mind, or not wrong, but a very like an exceptionally narrow
Yeah.
way to see these things. And obviously like equity or shared upside or ownership experiences are a big part of it, but I think if you're just locked into that mental model, I think you're going to miss the most revolutionary pieces of this tech. And I think there was a piece, I dropped it in the sheet, but like a tweet about Fartcoin being more valuable than like 85% of like
Yeah.
the public companies in the US. And I think you just need to recognize that like these like global permissionless markets for internet assets are just operating in an alternate economic dimension. And I think the best tokens going forward and the most interesting opportunities going forward are going to start from that starting point, not from the starting point of like, oh great, we now have digital equity.
Yeah, I mean, I see some people also like. I mean, the comments on this tweet are incredible. You know, boomer cope would be the definition of many of these sort of things, which is understandable. I mean, Fartcoin
For sure.
it is as much. It's probably more a statement on the current political and economic climate in the United States than it is a tech. Though it's not to say that there's some interesting things they're building there. Clearly, they're doing that as well. There we go. Yeah. That's true. Well, you're up. Hopefully, if it was not today.
Yeah, you should thank
yeah. But yeah, it does feel like folks kind of put tokens as equity, which I think is a very fair direction to go in. But I think people are misunderstanding the impact that would have on the valuations of the token networks that they're interested in. Like I think soon as you start to fundamentally value these things, the value on your favorite tokens are going to go down drastically. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why we don't get there very soon. I think the incentives are very much not there. But there's also this sort of, the goodwill, I always call it, on the balance sheet, right? Like what's the goodwill valuation of Fartcoin is probably 90% of the value, right? And it's one part social commentary, one part I like the tech, community, etc. And then you layer on top of this the global 24/7 market and desire for people to speculate, and from an entertainment perspective, and there are a lot of narratives out there around what's going on. But I agree. I think that it is wild how narrowly folks either bucket it into utility or future cash flows. I think on the extreme, the other extreme, they say it's going to be more like loyalty tokens, which I think is an even more insane comment than I think cash flowing tokens clearly going to be a thing. I think all assets will be tokenized at some point. It just makes a ton of sense to do it that way. But loyalty tokens feel like very much a similar miss. And so there's this like that's the mid curve, and then the edges are these sort of like captivating adventures that people are going on. And I mean, I think these things are clearly bubbles, right? But I mean, I think that's just sort of like an embedded understanding that anybody who's playing in crypto plays with,
but you
right?
You can dismiss them as that, or say, okay, what is actually real in here? And I think as I see it, if you're building a token network, like the three core levers you have to play with, it's like belief, access to experiences, and revenue, right? The equity piece is very tied to the revenue piece. But if all you have is that, I think someone is going to come and eat your lunch by actually connecting it to belief and access to experiences. And if you do have belief and access to experiences, then I think you have plenty of opportunities to figure out the latter. So I think it's just like so. It's just so important to understand if you're building a token network, you're not building a traditional organization with traditional equity structures, and the people that are buying it and holding it are not doing it because they want equity in your business. They're doing it for social, cultural belief. I want to be a part of something reasons, and I think that's the thing you need to go serve.
Agreed. I mean, it is tokens turn attention and belief into value, and then what do you go do with that value? And I think our operating belief is that that statement is true and has been proven to be more true from our early days of social tokens into NFTs, into DAOs, into meme coins, and also the mechanisms to do that in a sustainable long-term way are pretty incomplete. And we're still in this sort of boat where a few things seem to break through the noise and sustain purely on that liquidity and distribution advantage. But I think there's still like a lot of design space to get into how to go do these token launches better, how to think about returning value back to the network, and how to even just position that and structure it in a way that gives people a long-term belief, which I think it includes the mechanism design, and I think there's just a ton of open space there. So
yeah, totally. And great transition to Tokenize. This article by
Accelerate Tokenization.
ACC. I don't even know how to say the last part. Just acceleration. ACC. So this was written by Austin, who is ex-Federal Reserve, I think, a Uniswap protocol researcher, and he's now building a new product really focused on like fixing the issues with token issuance and on-chain markets. And he released just a really good post this week, kind of looking at the history of financial markets, kind of how the internet has been increasingly democratizing access to capital, and ultimately kind of what needs to change for, you know, middlemen to be completely removed and really like bring us to this world where, you know, the people on the internet and founders are capturing the vast majority of the value that gets created. And I think just worth reading through. I think I always just love the reminder of just how kind of like path dependent and like antiquated and kind of like made up the traditional financial infrastructure is. Like, you know, securities law came out of some like random dude getting rugged by a mining company in like the early 1900s, and then like all the implications and downstream implications of that have been profound.
Well,
so I think just go ahead.
Yeah, and just all the out. So it's both how many of the things we just assume have been around forever are very nascent still and were created by people. You can just go do things. And then two, just how inefficient the current sort of public markets are, especially around IPOs. I think if you scroll up a bit, Piece has a good stat here about, keep going right there. On average, 27% of all proceeds rates from an IPO go to the underwriters, 7% from the gross spread, and 20% from the systematic underpricing that directly benefits underwriters. And so you have this, you know, like ridiculous. And I think, you know, we have had the pleasure of knowing some folks that are involved in the Spotify sort of direct listing. And I think, you know, you go back to Slack doing similar things like that. So people have been trying to like push at these edges, and it was, you know, front page news of the business journals when they did this because of how crazy it was. And I'm not sure it was all that much cheaper ultimately, but I think maybe just the desire to have your own control over it was a good reason to go do it. But clearly, you know, as people get more, I guess, as blockchains themselves has become more ubiquitous and people see the benefits of it, and then folks start to build these tools. I mean, like everything that we have happening here, at least in the space that we're interested in, would not exist without AMMs, right? Like it was a huge shift, and I think that is still so early in sort of the innovation cycle here. And it's been really fun to be chatting with Austin, and I just bookmark everything he tweets because I leave those calls just super smart. So
yeah, I think pay attention to him.
Yeah, and I think even this category, right? Like there are, you know, if you look at the core of Pump and the success there, was a very simple mechanism. They're like, people want more trust in being able to back these things early and see some early upside from it, bonding curve, you know, graduation, etc. That's pretty basic, and I think there's you know, a lot more interesting things that can be done here, and you know, Austin and Whetstone are up to that. So,
well, I think it's also just crazy how still in like today's hyper connected world that the vast majority of the world can only access their local markets, and for in a lot of these markets, like it's literally just real estate, right? So I think the like impact of truly opening up global access to markets and capital, and you know, removing gatekeepers is going to have such a just profound impact on not only like who can found stuff and who can raise money, but who can fund stuff, and ultimately just like more founders with access to way more capital, creating way more value for more people is just going to be an incredible trend over the next ever, hopefully.
Over the next forever.
I think also we're seeing like Echo and Legion kind of pick up a ton of steam. I think we saw today that Mega ETH announced that they kind of did a $10 million community fundraising round at the same valuation that they raised at like 6 months ago. So
3 minutes sold out in 3 minutes.
In 3 minutes, I think.
Right. So you know, I mean, there's just such a desire to pursue it. Yeah.
Chip just did a successful one. You know, we're seeing a lot of.
I mean, I think what I was talking about earlier, just in how, I mean, a lot of the frustration founders have around VCs and that I hold as well is just in many ways limited by the incentives and the structure of venture funds and the business that they're in. And I think many would say like everybody's missed something because they kind of just couldn't fit it into the worldview that, you know, being a venture capital firm needs to hold. And so I just think like, you know, whether it's, you know, the syndicates or it's angel networks or it's, you know, launch pads or meme coins, all these things have just expanded the possibility of what can get funded. And I think, you know, it's fair. People say, wow, that's still a ton of money being wasted on stuff and it's just speculation, et cetera. And I always say I'm pro Juicero. If you remember the Juicero from back in the day, you know, a lot of money wasted on ultimately what was a shitty knockoff machine that was just squeezing juice out of a bag for you. But I think I would much rather live in a world where there's a lot of risk capital trying to go do new and interesting things. And I think you kind of have to remove some of your judgment from that if you want to have like a more free market driven world. Weird shit's going to get done. 100%. Scams are going to get done. But like, I think we don't look enough at what happens when somebody in Nigeria can come up and all of a sudden fund a startup and start participating on a global scale. And to me, that's core to the world that I want to live in.
Well, yeah, you don't get the weird things that end up working and changing the world without the weird
You get
things
Silicon
that
Valley
end up
Inc.,
falling on
which
its
is
face. Exactly.
20 years of taking B2B verticals and breaking them into smaller and smaller pieces.
Yeah,
Fun.
exactly.
All right, we'll give us one last topic or a lightning round, and we'll let people get out of here.
Yeah, maybe I'll just which one? So I'll talk Mozi quickly. So this is a new social product released by Ev Williams, who's founder of Twitter, founder of Medium. And I think just flagging it because anytime a proven successful consumer founder releases something new, it's worth paying attention to. So it's kind of funny for a few reasons. Like one, so basically he's building a private social network, like really just recognizing how social media has kind of become just pure media and entertainment and kind of lost, the early promises of
It's
social
definitely not
networks.
social.
Like it's not social anyway. So he's trying to bring that back and just, realizing the value of, real relationships and how hard it is to know who you know or actually, meaningfully connect with, the people you want to build long-term lasting relationships with. So I think product, very early kind of implementation of it. It's basically you can, add your real friends on the product and, put where you live and where you're going, and it'll tell you if you're in the same city as these people or going to the same events as people you know. But I think why I found it interesting was one, it was kind of this idea that like sounds really great, but ultimately like getting to this steady state where it's actually useful is very, very hard. It's like, if all my friends are on here, it'll be great, but I'm also not going to try to get them on here and none of them are there right now. So it's completely useless to me. So it's funny kind of seeing that. And like, if a first time founder kind of brought me this pitch, unless there was some like really smart kind of killer distribution strategy that they had in mind that hadn't been exploited and they had a lot of confidence in, like it would be a pretty easy thing to just dismiss for that idea. Obviously, because the kind of clout and connections and, attention Ev has is, he'll have a good chance to kind of overcome that, that cold start problem. And I think the second reason I found it interesting was just like how old, like people were working on this 20 years ago, right? And it's not a new idea. There's no like new kind of technology inflection that is like suddenly making this available, but it's more of like a cultural inflection, right? It's like people are kind of increasingly getting disillusioned with algorithms and social media and are kind of wondering how they just, form and build like real meaningful connections again. And kind of when I just started thinking about that and, God knows where AI takes us, I think a lot of these like old ideas or new things that aren't necessarily like technologically revolutionary or even like the ideas revolutionary are just going to actually become important again or wanted again. So I thought it was kind of interesting for that reason.
Yeah, it feels like part of the sort of cozy web meta that I think has struggled because most internet businesses need scale to have a good business model. And if you're playing in one, I mean, you can get to scale here, I think, through more iterative steps. But, I think in many ways, it's kind of why the crypto angle is interesting with a lot of these things, right? Interesting, solving cold start in some way or maybe not needing to have 1 million customers to be able to actually have a good business that sort of runs here. So, yeah, I think that's interesting. It's funny, this feels like a Farcaster feature in many ways, where you just change my location and then I get a bunch of DMs. But yeah, are we signing up, Josh? Are we signing up?
This app couldn't feature.
But
totally.
I think that's, I mean, in our group chats, we've been seeing all these apps that are literally just, I mean, it's apps as content, right? A lot of the AI wrappers that are being incredibly effectively distributed on TikTok. It's kind of changing this dynamic where maybe you don't need to think of you can play in ephemerality a lot more and you can compound attention and value around it. And even just looking at how simple this is in many ways, I think you can see that there's clear opportunities to layer on more if they get the kind of core mechanic working. So,
yep.
All righty, let's leave it there. Programming note: we are for the next couple of weeks going to be shifting the style of Internet Explorers. We are leaning full into X and explore what doing a few spaces. Internet Explorers as spaces might look like. I think this is a real fun medium where I get to stare at my face on screen, which obviously makes me feel good, and the visual representation here. But it doesn't feel as social and interactive as I think we might be able to get here. And since so many of the folks that are listening regularly are also just big brain geniuses pushing at interesting angles, I think the dynamic shift might be fun to play with. And also we're just playing around in the new world that X continues to bring to us and seeing how we can continue to get value out of that platform. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. And if you've been watching these shows and being like, Josh and Jess are just fucking idiots and I want to be able to get in and reply.
You're
Well,
getting
guess
your
what?
chance.
You're going to have your chance. So that should be fun. Episode 59. We'll be back with episode 60 next Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern time. It will be on Twitter Spaces. So make sure you're following the C Club HQ Twitter account. And of course, we share all the most interesting things we see in Josh's newsletter and in the C Club curated Telegram chat, which is not out there publicly available. And if you want it and you're listening, shoot us a DM, myself or Josh, or yeah, we'll be keeping an eye out, get you in there. Coming up to the year end, looking forward to our year in review and what the heck is next type of shows. Assuming we're going to get a lot of that over the next little while. Also in this era where about 50 to 65% of the VCs I message with deals are already on vacation. So if you're out there fundraising something in the consumer crypto space, we're still active, baby. We're out here doing stuff. So shoot us a DM. We'd love to hear from you. Peace, Josh. Thank you, Poof and Martin. Appreciate you hanging out with us today. Till next week, I guess we'll see you on chain.
Peace.
Internet